Mahmoud El-Kati writes books on the African American experience. He was one of the first black professors at the University of Minnesota. He also taught at Macalester College. He has a show on KMOJ radio station. He is the one who our people goes to learn about black culture.
Professor, could you please join us on stage?
All right.
How did you get started? What turned the light bulb on that made you start to dig in? Because you're so knowledgeable about even Pan-Africanism, going all the way back to the colonies, to the present and understanding. So what turned that light bulb on?
To be honest, I wish I knew. But before we get into anything, I want to first hail and salute Titilayo, Bediako.
Yeah, stand up. Stand up. This sister is putting in some real next generation work. Next generation.
I want to also hail and salute Nikima and Marquez. I promise not to take long. I promise you. I won't overbear you. And those of you know.
We gave you
A little
space.
bit. Yeah, I'm not a preacher, but I have this kind of inclinations. But I want to say this and think, because this is very important for everybody to understand, and for human beings, period, the whole human family, but expressly for people in the condition of African Americans in the United States of America. And this is because we are a part of the oppressed family in humanity. African people, black people don't like it, and certainly the oppressor doesn't like for people like me to talk this way, but the fact of the matter is the most important thing for us is freedom, dignity, respect for human personality. That's the most important thing. It's not affirmative action. It's not a set-aside program. It's not having the top job at some corporate entity. It's that we are human beings and we deserve dignity and respect like all other human beings. And that's what the fight is about. It's not a fight about anything else in this country, in the Western world, is whether or not black people, African descended people in the world, are fully fleshed human beings in the eyes of most white people. I say no, and that is the problem. There never has been, is now, never will be a Negro problem in America, a black problem. The problem is white people. That doesn't mean I hate white people, I'm anti-white. Anybody who has a modicum of understanding of human history knows that. This is new. This is a time when there were no white people calling themselves white people. That's an invention. There was no time when black people anywhere in Africa, anywhere else, were calling themselves Negroes. That's an invention. That's a modern racist construction which came into being about 400 or 500 years ago. I'll use Columbus. Y'all have heard of him, right? He discovered America when I was in second grade. He sailed the ocean blue and all of that. You know, that's a myth. He never set foot in America. Now, if any class you go to, you tell the teacher, I told you to say that. That's not true. That's a myth. A myth is not an outright lie. I didn't know. He was in the Caribbean, he was in Cuba, he was in Haiti, but he never set foot on the mainland of America. That's not why it's called Columbus. It's called Amerigo Vespucci, the other guy. And Vespucci was an explorer like Columbus, and he was from the Latin countries, and they anglicized that to make another word English. Amerigo Vespucci, Amerigo became America in English. See, that's how myths are made. And this is what we want. I think that black people, as I understand the story of black people's struggle for freedom, it is not to pounce upon, it is not to oppress any segment of the human family. We want to be free from all the madnesses that America is, and it's a child of the Western world. Racism wasn't born in America. Get that out of your head. It was brought here. It was brought here by English-speaking people, Spanish-speaking people, Portuguese-speaking people, to a lesser extent, people who spoke Dutch. All this is becoming clearer now, and I'm saying all this to say that, and I'm glad the audience is integrated. By that I mean intergenerational. It's integrated. Like the old one-room schoolhouse. You know, you can learn together intergenerationally. You know, you can explain what I'm sure some of the children doesn't understand what I'm talking about. That's your job, Dad, cousin, Bill, uncle, to have this conversation with your child. Yeah. That's where many of us learn. I had conversations with my grandmother after church to explain what this means, what that means. See, that's another way of learning. There's more than one way to learn. There's more than one way to skin a cat, too. But I want to salute these beautiful people who are doing the right thing, and insofar as our struggle is concerned. The most important things about human beings, and I'm talking about the human family. I insist that I'm a human being, no matter what the definition of racists have been coming up with since Decomte de Gouverneur. You say, well, who the hell is that? Well, he helped write the book on racism. He wrote a book called The Inequality of Races. And he wasn't talking about black people, he was talking about white people. People we call white. He was talking about the Nordic people being superior to the Mediterranean people, like darker white people in the Mediterranean, Italians, Jews like that. He wasn't talking about English people who are blonde-headed or brown-headed. He's talking about something called Nordic, which gave us Hitler. You understand? This idea of race has been around a long time. Racism, ISM, which gives its action, has been around for about 300 or 400 years. The action, the segregation, you know what that is? Racial slavery, you know what that is? Okay. Now, that's the ism. But everything in this world comes from ideas. And race is an idea which was actualized through the period of exploration, imperialism, colonization, and racial slavery. Racial slavery is new in the world. There's nothing new about slavery. When the world was young, slavery was old. There was slavery in Europe, in Egypt. There was slavery in China. There was slavery in India. Nothing, you know, people exploiting the labor of other people. And slavery was governed primarily by the rules of war, not race. What we call slavery shouldn't be called slavery. You know, because we don't have the right word for it. It's been fixed by the experience of the West and black people. When people think of slavery, they think of black people because it's so recent in history. You know, slaves were in Egypt. Jews were slaves. almost everybody you can name has a background in what might be called slavery. So black people stop being ashamed and hiding from that.
That's right. Amen.
White people stop that foolishness. You know, and it is foolish. You know, understand what Ralph Ellison taught us, the man who wrote one of the great books of the 20th century, Invisible Man, when he discovered who he really was. He said, "I'm no longer ashamed that my ancestors were slaves. I'm only ashamed of having once been ashamed when I found out who I really was." You understand? That I'm ashamed. These are magnificent human beings. Not better, but different. Black people are different. Don't go around here borrowing pages from white books saying you're better than somebody because you can do this better or that better. You're not better. You're different. And history made you different, and accept it, embrace it, and make something out of it. Everybody wants to be something better than they are at the moment, and that's what we're trying to teach the world. We want to make this a better country. That's the story of black people in America. Any gain for black people is a gain for everybody. If you don't know that, you don't know anything about America. You don't know. If you don't know that, and I'll say this for the children. This is the 96th anniversary of the observance of African American History Month. Wow. Been doing it for 96 years. Almost as old as I am. We've been doing this a long time. And we have to thank for this Dr. Carter G. Woodson. I want all the young people to say this after me. Carter G. Woodson. I should have said the old people too. Carter G. Woodson. That was a human being. A man like you with a beating heart and living affections who created this observance.
That's right.
It didn't come out of the sky. It has nothing to do with picking a cold month in February for black people. It's nothing to do with it. That's nonsense. It's a human being who lived on this earth for 75 years, from 1875 until 1950. And he put most of his conscious life to studying black people all over the world. He taught for about 10 years in the Philippines. He lived in Asia. He went to China. He went to Central America. He went to South America. He wrote 23 books, on black people. And the most important one that you know of, or you should know of, is it's called the Miseducation of the what? Of the Negro. Thank God. I think he wrote that book in 1935. It's more widespread now than ever. But he wrote a book prior to that, 20 years before that, called The Education of the Negro. Education is the word which means, it comes from the Greeks. What didn't come from the Greeks? And it's educate, meaning to lead oneself out of ignorance. That's what education means. You don't have to go to school to educate yourself. But, okay, you understand? Frederick Douglass never spent a day in school except to go to address the graduating class. He never had formal education. So you wonder how he spoke fluently 4 different languages. He's a slave. As he said, I was a piece of property until I was 20 years old and took my freedom. Nobody gave you freedom, you take your freedom. And he and so many other black people have done that. So this is what Ellison was talking about. I'm proud that I'm a descendant of these people who the world or the oppressor defined as 3/5 of other persons. Part of me is supposed to be property, and part of me is supposed to be human. You all know where that came from? The First Amendment in the American Constitution. It's in the Constitution that these guys in Washington are talking about. We were once defined as 3/5 of other persons legally. That means you were property in the eyes of the oppressor and not fully fleshed human beings. We got to put that on the table right now during the Trump era. Put it on the table. All of these things that people are ducking and dodging around. Trump, inadvertently, I know you're not going to agree with me, is doing us a favor by reviving white supremacy. Yeah, because that's what it is. It's not racism. By racism, I mean white supremacy. And white supremacy is a doctrine that evolved and was created by modern Western Europeans, by Frenchmen, by Englishmen, by Germans, not all white people. People in Eastern Europe, it had nothing to do with this. It's the 15 countries of Western Europe. That's why Europe is so what? Rich, and Africa is so poor. And the development of Europe made Africa poor. How Walter Rodney, a great black scholar, wrote the book of how Europe underdeveloped Africa. Before Columbus, they were about even in development and growth in civilization was Africa. After slavery began, the Atlantic slave trade, that's when the wealth of Africa belonged to Europe. Came to, what do you mean by wealth? Wealth comes from labor. You can't have wealth without labor. The source of all wealth is labor. Everything in this room you see comes from some labor. Not the way we labor now, because you had technological revolution and so machines replaced black people. That's the Industrial Revolution. We stimulated the Industrial Revolution. If you were living in the South at the time of the Civil War, look, I'm no genius, a deep cat, I'm just like anybody else, And I got trapped by the freedom bug when I was very young. That's it. At different stages. Some people get it when they're 16, they're 15, they go to college, and sometimes they earn the degrees, and then they get it. But I got it from my grandmama. That's where the freedom bug comes from. Teaching me to read before going to school. Half of my education is owed to black newspapers. I've been reading them since I was 5 years old. I have no degree in that. There's no degree. That's my grandmama gave me the degree, but that's nonsense. We can educate ourselves. That's what Nakima is doing. That's what Titilayo, Bediako is doing. And how do you do that? By building institutions. Institutions are enduring processes. Can I prove it? Yes, I can. I've spent most of my life in Minneapolis and St. Paul. And, think what you will of me, that's where I've been. I'm a Southern boy and so forth, left when I was 17 and all of that, Saw a little bit of the world before I came here. But education has to be self-induced too. We can educate ourselves. If it means leaving yourself out of ignorance, we can do that. We've done some of that since the 1960s. The 1960s is the most credible decade of the 20th century. It is remarkable. Black people don't seem to know what they have done for themselves and for this country. The decade of the 60s was the culmination of something, the unfinished work of the Civil War and the failure of Reconstruction. This is the Civil Rights Movement is rooted in the failure of Reconstruction. That's a period in which black people were free for a little while, 10, 12, 15 years, and it was taken away from us. There was one time we voted, black males voted, not women at all. See, this is a male chauvinist society. We just discovered it 25 or 30 years ago. Yeah, black men got to vote for white women. In 1870, that's how long we were supposed to vote. And when the black people got to vote, the black men vote, they did. They elected over 2,000 black people to public office. There were senators from Mississippi, believe that. You understand? There were 20 black people. At one point in American history, South Carolina had a state legislature, was majority black. Yeah. And they're the ones who brought public school system to the South. The black legislators. They passed the they're the ones that gave white women the right to own property. Black legislators, you never heard of them. But they were men who lived, and one of them replaced the president of the Confederacy.
Amen.
Do you think, you know, all this ain't super secret Mahmoud stuff. Anybody can know this. Anybody, he can.
Now he does. That's right.
Know 80% of what I'm talking about. If he's exposed to it.
Right.
That's all. There's no such thing as achievement gap. Get that out of your head. When some of us were coming along, they always pulling tricks on. It has to do with the notion that black people are inherently less intelligent than white people. That's a profound belief. And it's in some of our heads. That some black people actually believe the white people are smarter than them because they're white. You may be smarter than me, but it ain't because you're white. You have some individual gifts. God gives us individual. Our population is like any other population in the world. There's a genius over here and an idiot over there. Most of the ordinary people. That's who we are. And we have geniuses. Our genius has been suppressed. You know, whites has been elevated. They got nothing to do with you having less pigment than me in your skin that makes you smarter than me. We got to attack that. That's the ideology of what. No, don't say complain. Attack it. No, you ain't. Jimmy Baldwin, whom I think is morally the bravest man of my time. Yeah, I know Martin was there. But he said it right. You know, I don't want to be white.
All right.
I want to grow up. And so should you. He said, no, all white audience, and so should you. That's crazy. Now, he was a near genius. And he discovered he was smart when he was very young. He was smarter than most people. That's not a good thing if you're black and smart and young. That's not necessarily a good thing. You up against the wall. When you're smart and young and you discover that you're smart, you gonna catch some hell from somebody. And some of your old black people don't believe it. How come he's so smart? You know, because God gave that to him. That's right. Nature gave that to him. You know, there's nothing wrong with his skin color. This is genius is individual. I went farther than I wanted to.
Can I have the mic a minute?
Okay. So now you can see why we need to have Mahmoud El-Kati in the curriculum in Minnesota schools. This is what we're pushing for. We need to call superintendents of Minneapolis, St. Paul, everywhere. We deserve it. We need to learn. We need to know. And let me just say that Mahmoud is part of a collaboration in terms of this new book towards an African education. Yes. Mahmoud, will you talk about this a little bit?
Thank you. Almost forgot about the book. Yeah, this is, let me say this, institutions. This can become an institution.
Right.
You say, what is an institution? Don't go fancy with me. An institution is an enduring process. It is a process, whatever the process is. You know, it can be medicine, it can be education, it can be theater, it can be anything, something that endures. You're not here today and going tomorrow. We, when institute, I'm proclaiming, and you will hear this shortly in the future, is an institution. Because it's 23 years old. You say, well, wait a minute now. Because when I came into the world, people used to say generations were every 30 years. And then they cut it down after World War II. 25 years. Now here's where you really, black people should stand up and do the definitions. One of the things about is freedom is self-definition. You define yourself and other things around you. I say an institution, given the fact that the time span, what we call time, has sped up since World War II. I say institutions in our community, by our time, because it is just 20 years.
All right. Okay.
This institution is 23 years old. This Seed Academy is up. Seed Academy is over 30 years old. I met a graduate of Seed who just graduated from college about 3 weeks ago. You know, OIC is an institution. Sabathany, that's where some of the first classes I ever taught was in a little house next to Sabathany Church. That's almost 40 years ago. That's an institution. And I've counted 25 institutions that have been built in this community since I've been here. You know them, but you don't call them institutions. We got to proclaim that. This is an institution because it is trained over a generation of our children. You understand? Yeah, some of you have children here, some of you. You know, and we support that. I'm for anything having to deal with children. Because that's the only, don't tell anybody I told you this. That's the only wealth you really have, or your youth, or your young human beings are wealth. But Cadillac ain't wealth. That's the thing that comes and goes. A telephone is human beings. Well, it's human beings make Cadillacs, make this stuff here. That's the only wealth. I learned that from an African leader by the name of Julius Nyerere of Tanzania. He said, no, I ain't going for it. For the okey-doke. I'm going to develop people. I don't want baby skyscrapers and traffic jams like the Western African countries. I want to develop human beings. That's what development means to me. A literate population. A population that can feed itself. A population of skilled workers. That's wealth. Not a Cadillac, sorry. So, well, you know, it'll tear up and so forth. I'm not the only one that knows this. You know, as dumb as he is, the president knows this. Or as dumb as he acts, I don't know. He knows that. That's what the fear is. That you're going to develop your children strong, resilient, smart, life-making human beings. That's the fear. That's why the man shoots a child 18 times, dead before he hits the ground. That's the fear of young black men and young black women. That's really what it's all about, y'all. Don't let anybody kid you. It ain't about, I don't like white folk. Come on with that nonsense. It ain't about white folks. As people, it's the deed. The judgment is on the deed. Stop the deed. And it's over. Stop doing what you're doing. Through what? How do you do it? Through your institutions. All American institutions are based on the doctrine of white supremacy. All of them. Now go get any professor you want from anywhere, Harvard, Yale, Princeton. Let's have it out. Let's have it out, right? That's what that's about. Institutions are instruments of oppression all over the world. It's in Africa, it's in Asia. You know, you had institutions oppress people. That's what what's an institution? Big in an army. What's an institution? A government. What's an institution? A religious organization. What's an institution? An educational organization. What's an institution? An economic organization. Banks and so forth. Those are institutions. They're not individuals. Individuals run them, but they have policies and programs that control people's life and make people's behavior predictable. That's why some of us, somebody alluded to self-hate. That's where that comes from. You think it's wrong to be black because the institutions teach you that. White people are norm and blacks are the abnormal. Or to a lesser extent, Native Americans too. I've got to say this, and then I'll quit. Good. No, because I know a lot of people are not down for this kind of stuff, and I understand that.
No, they're down in here. That's why they're here. They're down for it.
Okay, I just look. The stuff is, man, y'all gotta, these people who shaped my life, y'all gotta, beginning with my grandmother and John Henry Clark and all the Du Bois and all of, some of them, they shaped my life, in the midst of all this madness. Somehow they got through to me. I'm no different from any brother who's been down the line. It's just, it's an accident. I mean, it's just, I'm supposed to be in a statistic easily. I know that I'm aware of, I'm supposed to be dead 3 times. But, yeah, by the hands of policemen, I'm supposed to be dead. Well. Sure. And I mean, it's so obvious with hindsight that so, I'm no different. I got through the crack because I encountered people. And I come from my education, and that it is to the extent that I have any, is that it's organic. No school is responsible for that. I'm proud to say, it's sound twisted, that I've never taken but one formal course in African American history. Never. And that was only because I went to a historically black school called Wilberforce University. Hey. And those proud AMEs, you know what you couldn't get out of the damn school unless you took 2 courses. I don't care if you're a straight A student. I don't care if you've not been on the dean's list too. I don't care how many times you've been on the dean's list. You gotta know who you are. And it was required. You couldn't graduate. Those are the only formal places. The others comes from the various scholars around this country, John Clark, John Jackson, Ben Yusef Jacobin. I used to follow those men around. I go 500 miles from Chicago to hear John Clark lecture. When I go to New York, I go to he had one of those big brownstones, some of the best architect ever in New York. He bought one. His library had 10,000 books in it. And he would sit down there and talk to him, and I'd tape him and listen to him. He's been to this town at least a dozen times. How do you know that? Because I brought him here. He used to be here, all over the place. He used to come to the Way. Anybody know the Way? Yeah. That's where my career started. Not at the university. On the street. With some young brothers. On the prison merry-go-round. Yeah, and people ask me, what did you come over here? You had a nice little job. Somebody know. He's a psychological counselor. Which a white man put on me. I didn't earn that. He just gave me a title. See, they needed a token Negro, so they got me. You got a title, But when Syl Davis approached me and said, we're trying to build a different kind of institution, not a settlement house, but we want to be a part of the movement. Would you join me if I get this thing off the ground? Yes. And I say, yeah, I can't wait. What do you, people say, why you left this good little middle class job, on the way to a PhD and all of that, Listen, I'm telling you, the people make me who I am. I know where I belong. I didn't belong at the University of Chicago where I was accepted. I belonged over here in North Minneapolis. I'm a St. Paulite. Well, that's where the bad people are. They get bad. They get raucous over there, and they talking about politics. Hell, that's where I want to be. That's where, and that's why people who know me real well, except my dear friends, don't even know that I've lived in St. Paul for 50 years. They think I live in North Minneapolis. Anybody, I go in the grocery store, I'm a night shopper at the grocery store, and I'm down there shopping and so forth. See a brother or sister from Minneapolis, 10 o'clock at night, and they look, what are you doing over here? No, I should be asking you that. I live in St. Paul. But I spend my life in Minneapolis, but I sleep, and my family is in St. Paul. It's not in Minneapolis, see? Because that's what the movement will do for you. It will snatch you, buddy, and won't let you go. He said, I want to be where the action is because I came here from Cleveland, from Huff area. That's the roughest, toughest area in Cleveland. That's where the thing went up, the rebellion was there. I worked there. So it was, North Minneapolis resembled Huff to me. Well, that's where them bad Negroes are. Well, I want to be over there. Yeah, because I know if you say they bad, they can't be that bad. If the established order calling people criminals and people who want to help people in prison programs say we were coddling criminals, you're a criminal. Well, we got to turn this thing upside down. We're not the criminals. We're the pace setters for human freedom. We are that moral arc that Dr. King talked about. The moral arc of the university is long, but it bends toward freedom. That's where we are. I'm not going to fall. I'm not. Yeah. No, I'm not leaving. But I want to just say something for the children. I hope you are, and I hope I didn't bore you children. I got some great children's stories. That's another story. But this is a mixed audience. Generationally, I want you to repeat after me some great words from our forefathers. These are words to live by. These are the things that inspired these people like Josie and so many others that you picked out. This is what caused them to do what they do. I want you to repeat some of it after me. Here we are. And here we are likely to be. To imagine that we shall be eradicated is absurd and ridiculous. We can be changed. We can be modified. Or even assimilated. But never extinguished. We therefore repeat that we are here. That this is our country too. We shall neither die out, nor shall we be driven away. But we shall go with this people, either as a testimony against them, or as an evidence in their favor throughout their generation. That's Frederick Douglass taught us that. This is our country. And I don't mean to dismiss and disrespect the indigenous people. They're the original landlords.
That's right.
They were here thousands of years before Africans or white people showed up. But I ain't gonna let no white man look at me as if I just showed up. Been here since 1619. That's before the Mayflower. That's before George Washington was born. That's before the American flag was invented. That's before give me liberty, give me death. That's what black people are like, oh, we're not the new kid on the block. You're going to look at the white man next time and say, not me, buddy, stop talking about me. You just drove up. You just drove up. After the Civil War, most white people couldn't date back, like I'm from a slave family. We didn't have birth certificates and so forth. But I can date back clearly in my family on my mother's father's side, 7 generations. The average white man can't do that. They know that. The people in think tanks know that. The government know that. The oldest population next to the indigenous people are African people. They've been here longer. We've been here for 14 generations. White people can't say that. So what do you mean? What are you doing in this neighborhood? You know. No, you ought to be upset. What are you asking me what I'm doing here? I was here when you got here. You the one that just drove up. I didn't just drive up into a ghetto. I didn't come out in the ghetto. I came, most of my life has been spent in the farm, in the rural, growing and raising things, and so forth, just like a Minnesota farmer. We built Charleston, which was once the largest city in America. Charleston, South Carolina, was once the largest city in America. People who built it were black labor. That's who built that sucker. You know, oldest people at Wall Street built by black people. That's what do you think those 1,000 grave sites came from downtown about 20 years ago when they discovered the black slaves? Over 1,000. Lastly, I'm getting the signal. Lastly, I want y'all to go down with me on this one. Because we're so wise. God. Frederick Douglass was so wise. He was a major leader of 2 movements. Abolitionists for the freedom of black people. And he was a political feminist. See, America, I'm a political feminist. You don't have to be a female to be a feminist. That's a political construct. I'm a feminist, you know. I don't have to be built a certain way. You know, this is about freedom and justice and equality and respect for human personality. Douglass understood that. And so he said, truth is of no color. Right is of no sex. You don't get that? Truth is of no color. Right is of no sex. That was on his masthead of the newspaper. He led 2 movements. The last people he addressed, his last public speech, was to white women in Washington, D.C. He died the next morning. I'm saying that for some, you know, people who think they're feminists, who don't bring up Frederick Douglass' name. But if you go to New York, they have what? Lucretia Mott, Susan B. Anthony, what's the other? The big 3, and Frederick Douglass. There's statues to 4 of them. Go to New York, to Seneca Falls. That's where the women's rights movement started. He was the black male who addressed the audience. Don't tell me about us. We're transcendent people. We ain't about no race. We're about transcending race. We're human-centric people. We're not, you get it?
Amen, amen.
We're not about the race thing. The only reason why we even call ourselves race is because white people impose that on you. The only reason why you call yourself a Negro is because they impose that innocent, yes, Spanish word simply means an adjective meaning black, like these pants. That's a common name in the Portuguese and Spanish language. Del Negro River, the 2nd biggest river in Brazil. It's a common word, and they borrowed the word from the Spanish because the Spanish and the Portuguese and West Africans go way back before Columbus. Way back. Repeat after me. All of us. Let the children do this. Can you do this with me? Yeah. All right, here we go. The whole history of the struggle for freedom has been born of earnest struggle.
Struggle.
The conflict
The conflict
must be exciting,
must be exciting,
agitating,
agitating,
and all-absorbing.
and all-absorbing.
For the time being,
For the time being,
putting all other tumults
for the all amounts
to silence.
to silence.
It must do this,
It must do this,
or it does nothing.
or it does nothing.
For if there is no struggle,
For there's no
there is no progress.
there is no progress.
Men and women
Men and women
who want struggle without freedom,
who want to struggle without freedom,
they want to reign
they want to reign
without thunder and lightning.
without thunder and lightning.
They want the oceans
They want the ocean
without the awful roar of its mighty waters.
without the open road, without water.
The struggle may be a moral one,
Struggle may be more,
or it may be a physical one,
or maybe a physical,
but it must
but it must
be
be
a struggle.
a struggle.
Power concedes
Power conceives
nothing
nothing
without a demand.
without a man.
So then,
So then,
black men and women
black men and
will
women
be held at the north,
will be held at the north.
hunted and flogged at the south. So long as he submit to these devilish outrages,
So long these submissions and outrages,
either moral or physical,
and moral and physical,
men and women
men and women
may not get
may not get
all that they pay
all the pay
for in this world,
for in this world.
but they sure as hell must pay
But they sure as hell must pay.
for all that they get.
So I'm gonna ask TT to come on up right quick. As I said before, Professor has been part of my life, and I'm gonna give TT a moment to say how he's impacted her life too, because I know that he has. I did leave off the KMOJ listening time I've put in my elderly years here too, but you wanna come up, TT?
I am so honored to be on the stage with Mahmoud El-Kati. He's meant a lot in my life, a lot in my family's life. As a matter of fact, when my father died, Mahmoud was right there and he eulogized my dad. And he loves black people more than anyone I know. And on behalf of Assata Speaks, on behalf of the black community, on behalf of Chauntyll,
We can't hear you, Chauntyll.
We want the honor of presenting you with this award, sir. I want to thank you so much for all that you've brought to our community. Also, I remember I was in the tea house one time, and I had on a Katie McGuire shirt, and he was appreciating that, and I asked permission if I could start a line of our community leaders, and so one of my designers made this shirt, and I wanted to give it to you today. I will be having my own Professor Mahmoud El-Kati shirt also that I'll be wearing in the community to remind people of who is carrying us. Thank you.
I know, I want one too.
No, I don't want to make you cry.
I think
So also, can you hold this up to camera? People want to see what you got here. There's the award.
what does it say, Chauntyll?
So I'm gonna read it real quick. Mahmoud El-Kati, historian, African guru, freedom fighter, revolutionary. This award is presented on behalf of the community, Thursday, February 27th, 2020 at Assata Speaks. Thank you for your undying love and for being unapologetically black. Thank you.
I'm mystified by something. How did you all make these pictures of me look so good?
We have an amazing designer, Amelia in the back. She's amazing with these designs. Please give a round of applause to all of our great elders that were here giving us all this beautiful wisdom today.